Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host tonight, Objectively Dan. This is a live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. And every single week, I usually have a special guest, and this week is no different. I have a special guest with me today. It is Apostate Prophet. Apostate Prophet, welcome to Truth Wanted.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Yes, and thank you so much for being on. For those who aren't aware, Apostate Prophet is you're a YouTuber. You're a YouTuber. Yeah. You make content on the YouTubes. You primarily make content. Well, I mean, I guess for Muslims and ex-Muslims, right? How would you describe your content?
I mean, it is mainly just analyzing my former beliefs and critically analyzing them, criticizing them is how I would describe it. It's mostly directed at people who are interested in Islam or who are ex-Muslims or who are doubting and questioning. But in the end, it can be for anybody. It can be also for Muslims in general, So I'm just putting the information out there, everything that I know, everything that I have experienced, everything that I think. And I guess people can take it as they wish.
Yeah, so I've said this every time I think we've had an ex-Muslim guest.
That's what I do with my channel.
Gotcha.
I'm an ex-Muslim. I'm a former Muslim. I started my YouTube channel about 3 years ago. That's when I started. That's when I started. Sorry, I need to fix some technical issues here. That's when I started. It has grown very much. At the beginning, I wanted this to be more directed toward people who don't believe in Islam and who analyze it and who who criticize it or who think about dealing with Islam in general. But I also had generally the audience in mind that has left Islam behind, or people who, like me back then, question Islam and who look for answers online, or who look for answers in the world in general. Because I remember myself, I used to be very religious, and I wanted answers to certain things that really bothered me when I was religious. And I just want to be that guy who can be there for those who are looking for answers right now. And as long as I can achieve that, that makes me happy,
Yeah, of course. I've said this before for my previous ex-Muslim guests, but I would take being an ex-Christian on the internet than an ex-Muslim on the internet any day of the week. It seems like it's just, it's not that obviously I don't face, criticisms and stuff, and there aren't, conversations there, but the threats of violence that I've seen towards my ex-Muslim friends, it just seems more constant. I don't know, like, obviously this is purely anecdotal, but I just don't understand like the difference there. What do you think is the difference there in the kinds of worlds we operate on? Because obviously I'm an ex-Christian. I get pushback from Christians who say I was never a real Christian. The same thing that obviously you do, saying you were never a real Muslim, stuff like that. Like, do you think there's a difference there in the kinds of content that we create, or or do you think it's mostly the same?
Well, I have to be very honest here. The content is different on a certain level necessarily, because the religions and the ideologies that we are dealing with are fundamentally different, and these are things that have to be said. People often want to spread this notion, this idea that all religion is essentially the same, and criticizing one is just like criticizing the other. That's not entirely true. Religions have very big differences. One religion is very different to the other. Their essential theological beliefs and also their morals and their reliance on laws differ greatly from each other. When we talk about Islam, we don't simply have a religion which preaches a certain, a certain creation story, certain morals, a certain, day of judgment or end times, and then just going to one place or the other depending on your belief. Islam is much more holistic in a bad way, if you ask me, because it is not just a belief in God. It is, as you can see in the creed, the belief in Allah, who is supposed to be God, and also in the prophet that you have to pledge allegiance to. And with that pledge of allegiance, you also have to subscribe to very strict moral values and their legal punishments, which are to be applied in this world. So in Islam, it is a fundamental part of Islam that Islam also has a legal system and a system by which a nation should be ruled. I'm sorry, not a nation, by which humans in general should be ruled. So Islam has this fundamental aspect where it is supposed to be a state that has very harsh laws. And it is in that sense very political. And when you grow up as a Muslim, like when I grew up as a Muslim, what I learned was basically that we Muslims, us Muslims, are one people, like one nation, one group, and we are supposed to be loyal to that group. And all the others are the other group. So there are two groups, us Muslims and the others. And if others question us or criticize us or say certain things about us, then we know from our scripture, from the Quran and the words of the Prophet Muhammad, that they are simply trying to trick us and deceive us and take away our belief and make us just like them, and we are never to trust them and never to befriend them. So there's so much more there, which of course fuels people to act very differently from what you learn in the West about religion.
Yeah, and I think, speaking from like like an American perspective as well, like a lot of people who essentially look like me and come from backgrounds I do just don't interact enough with the Muslim world to really make any sort of, I would say, competent critique of it. Like the typical stereotypes that you see from, I mean, it's usually like right-wing folks who talk about people in this kind of bigoted way. Like it's obviously so far out there that it's not even true to the reality of the situation. But I do think, like, when you do look at the reality of this religious ideology, there's problems to it. I can't say that there aren't, right? So in current culture, it's become this bigger conversation of how we should talk about peoples of other faiths, right? And what that looks like coming from different cultural perspectives. But I don't know, I tend to find commonality in what I would, we'll call an extremist Muslim and what I would call an extremist Christian. As far as political ideologies go, like, they both want similar things. Like, the most hardcore of Christians want to be in government and want to, like, lay Christian law out on the land. And I think you see that with Muslim, the most hardcore of Muslims. So I do find some commonalities there, but I agree, like, the broad spectrum of belief there is different. Obviously conservative Christianity exists more so in the United States than in most countries. Broadly, like, that kind of Christianity doesn't exist in, like, a lot of Europe and in other places. Like, it's almost unique to a specific region. So I think we have to also be careful here when we talk about, like, what these traditions, because, like, neither tradition is monolith, and it becomes really hard when you start to say, well, I don't like this ideology because of this reason. And they're like, oh, well, that's not what we believe over here, and it just comes this back and forth where there's just nothing productive in there. So it's a tight line to walk, I think. And I obviously, this from talking about it online, right?
Yeah, well, the issue is, first off, yes, there is a great lack of proper information and communication when it comes to the criticism of Islam, and I myself realized
Mhm.
that when I left Islam, and over the years when I began, looking online and looking for atheist sources, for example, I found myself in
Mhm.
atheist circles, and what I saw was that 95% of Western atheists, maybe it's just an exaggeration, but that's just what I feel,
Mhm.
were just talking about Christianity. Nobody was talking about Islam, and those
Yeah.
who were talking about Islam were not very well informed very often. And I kind of thought, hey, I could do this. I could go out there and
Yeah.
start talking about this. So I did decide to do that. The issue is, I know where the sensitivities lie, when we're talking about
Mhm.
Islam as a religion. When we are in the West and we talk about Islam as a religion, when we're talking from a Western perspective, it looks like we're talking about this other religion, the religion of the others,
Mhm.
or the religion of people in a
Mm.
minority, and you want to be a little bit sensitive about this stuff. The issue is that applies to you as Western people. That did not apply to me when I lived in a Muslim country. That does not apply to many
Mm.
people that I know who live in Islamically run countries and who can tell you horror stories about what they experience and how they have to hide their thoughts, their most simple thoughts and beliefs, how they have to
Mm.
deny their true identities and their true thoughts forever because they are afraid of the terrible consequences that might happen to them and that happen to people all the time over there. And
Right.
the issue is that we can talk about how different religions have different groups of people that practice or interpret their religious beliefs in a certain way. uh, the difference with Islam is that when I talk about Islam, I don't ever talk about a certain group of Muslims or certain, organizations or movements of Muslims. I talk about the fundamental scripture which the religion relies on, and I do the same thing when I
Mm.
talk about Christianity. And when it comes to Islam, you simply have a book like the Quran that is claimed to be the word for word, speech of God, of Allah. And in that
Yeah.
book, you are given very clear instructions to rule by Islam, to punish by Islam, to spread by Islam, to subjugate people of different religious beliefs. And it calls other people from the different religious beliefs the worst of creatures and this and that. We might be sitting here thinking about how much sensitivity and respect we should have. But meanwhile, I open
Yeah.
the Quran that I have here and it tells me directly, hey, you are the worst of creatures. You are lower than cattle. And
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's. I mean, there's great points there. Obviously, yeah. I totally agree. It's when you get down to the texts, like it's hard to look at that and defend it in my eyes. And we're always going to be under the world of subjectivity here in interpreting these things, and there's always going to be experts that say, well, this actually means this and this actually means that, but that doesn't stop the fact that people believe a certain way and they're going to continue to believe a certain way, and it's because this text is a justification for this. So yeah,
Mhm.
I'm totally with you there. Before we get to some calls here, I do want to tell a quick story. I said I was going to tell this story. So last weekend, okay, I was in Abilene, Texas for some business. Okay, so Abilene, Texas, in case you're not familiar, is it's like your stereotypical Southern Texas religious town. I was told that it has the highest church to person ratio in the state. I could not verify that. It might be true, but when I was there, it felt like it was true. There was like churches next to churches next to churches. It was pretty crazy. So I saw this sign. I was with somebody in the car, and they point out this sign that said Demon Hunter Expo 2. And I was like, what the hell is a Demon Hunter Expo? Okay. I looked this thing up. Turns out it's a paintball event that happened. First of all, started last year in October. Okay. So during the pandemic, they decided to do this paintball event for the first time, which is fine. Not fine. Sorry. Not fine that they did that. I don't know why I just said fine. But it was sponsored by this church that they're trying to do again this October, where I guess the idea is people dress up as demons and like shoot people get shot at with paintball guns. I don't know what the theology there is. Is that can demons be like fought back through the power of paintball guns? I'm not sure. Don't know what's happening there. I guess there's like a sermon involved too. But the craziest thing is they have this YouTube trailer online where they talk about like what this thing is about, and they don't even talk about it like at all. It's just like a skit of a guy with a cowboy hat and a Bible, and there's a bunch of people like with t-shirts that say like lust and like apathy, and he like blows on this Bible to like kill these demons and then shoots them with paintball guns. It is the wildest thing I've ever seen, and I'm quite frankly disappointed. I wanted there to be a real demon hunter expo that I could go to and hunt demons at, but I don't know. I guess they didn't want to do that for me. So anyway, that's Abilene, Texas for you. Really, really wild place to be. I wouldn't suggest going there unless you have business, but whatever. And speaking of that, I also want to give a quick little, I'm going to say half plug, mysterious plug, because this month for October, we are doing something very special for a certain date. And let's just say reservations have been made. Okay, so folks who really like this show, who want to see something different is going to happen this month. So look forward to that, folks. Anyway, we are going to get to some calls here now. Apostate Prophet, are you ready to talk to some folks?
I sure am. Yes. I mean, if we're done talking about Islam, yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll probably keep talking about Islam. I think people will probably want to call in to talk about it. But before we get to calls, we have to give a shout out to the patron of the week, because every single week, Apostate Prophet, we always give a shout out to the wonderful patrons for patreon.com/truthwanted who decide to donate to this show. This show is put on by the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a 501c nonprofit, and I am a volunteer here. So all of the money that goes there goes towards making this show happen every week. So thank you to everybody who donates on that Patreon. This week's patron of the week is probably one of my favorite names so far, the Cute and Friendly Tarantula. Thank you, the Cute and Friendly Tarantula, for donating on Patreon. That is an excellent patron name. I love that so much. And thank you to everybody who donates on that Patreon. You guys rock. So thank you so much. And the crew is running 501c3. I thought I said 501c3. I guess I didn't. But anyway, now I think it's time to get to some calls. So if you're ready to take some calls, I'm ready to take some calls.
I think I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's do it. There's a couple of interesting calls here, and I was debating on who to take first. But I think I want to let's talk to Alan first, calling in from Canada.
The psychiatrist.
Alan, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
And he says,
hello, Alan, you are live. I said Canada, but it's actually California. I just can't read, apparently. All right, so Alan's not talking to us. I don't know what's happening there. Alan, you're hanging out and you're waiting to call us, and we got to talk to you. Now you won't want to talk to us, so I don't know what's going on there. Next, we'll talk to Barrie, who's calling in from New Zealand. Barrie, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Yeah, hi guys. I actually talked to you a few weeks ago, Dan, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
I come back.
What's up, Barrie?
Something different. Yeah.
Okay.
The topic I wanted to talk about this time, I titled it Atheism and Cultural Relativism.
Okay, interesting. Go on.
So I'll start off with me, white, male, cis, atheist, middle class, educated. I guess you can say pretty privileged in the society I live in, right?
Well, you live in New Zealand, so already I'm jealous of you. So yes, that does make you privileged.
It's not a bad country, yeah. But, one aspect of New Zealand is the fact that it's a colonized country,
That's true.
Much like North America, I guess. And as an atheist, of course, I'm quite open to criticize Christianity or Islam or whatever it may be, but I sometimes feel really awkward when I'm dealing with our indigenous culture, the Maori people, because they have their own spiritual outlook, and it's a very holistic one. But, you know, if it was some other kind of religious belief, I'd have no trouble at all criticizing it. But because of the power dynamic, being who I am and what I am, I feel awkward about criticizing people from an indigenous culture that have had their beliefs oppressed and crushed for hundreds of years. A culture where their spirituality is very important to them, you know?
Yes. Yeah, it is awkward. And I this is a great thing to bring up, because I think largely from what I've seen in the short time I've been in the community, in the past, I don't know how much this question has really been addressed. I think people now are kind of more thinking about this as, you know, the internet continues to grow, bring in more voices, and people from different perspectives are continuing to have this dialogue. You know, I, for one, when I come on this platform and I get to talk, I'm very, I make sure to talk about what's important to me. And I think the important thing is talking about the people who are in our government, the people who are influencing the nation, who are trying to make their policies happen, who are trying to make their way of life happen, and trying to influence everybody else. If the Aborigine people were trying to do that for us, and they were a majority in our government, I think I would be more critical of that too. But, you know, like it's just not a thing that's happening. So I'm mostly against like Christian nationalism, because I think Christian nationalism is a threat, and I think that we have a right to talk about that. So yeah, it's a tough thing, because at the same time, I don't believe in any other particular religious tradition around the world, indigenous or otherwise. So I guess I don't spend my time talking about it as much, but it doesn't mean that, you know, they're not worth exploring, right? What do you think, Apostate Prophet?
Well, if I may say a few words about that, I mean, I don't know very much about the whole religion and the mythology of the Maori people, but as far as I understand it, they simply have certain nature beliefs. They explain the origins of water and fire and this and that in different ways. And just like many other people, just like many other different cultures in history, as is common to anthropology, they have their own ways to explain the origins of life and the world. I mean, it was very common in Europe and in surrounding cultures and continents to have some very primitive, and I'm trying to say this in a non-offensive way, you know, primitive from today's perspective, ways to explain how the world emerged and how it was created. There are different creation myths. So these people simply had their own interpretations of how the world works, because they didn't understand it much better. They still, in smaller numbers nowadays, hold on to those beliefs. And you know, religion is a regular, normal, essential, maybe part of human civilization and history. Nevertheless, although I don't believe that every wrong idea and every ridiculous idea, as wrong and as ridiculous it is, deserves to be criticized, or, you know, that we have this obligation to criticize them. If I did know that in a certain culture there are such religious practices that directly oppress the members of this religion, and that cause major harm to them, and there are people within this culture who really have this cry for help, and who really want to get out, and whose lives are turned to hell because of these religious beliefs. And I think, I'm sorry, despite the history, despite what is behind it, I mean, it deserves to be pointed out. It deserves to be criticized. We should have the right to say, hey, look, I understand the history, I understand the sensitivities, but these and these and these and these practices are completely contrary to human flourishing, and they cause so much pain, and they need to stop. It's just my 2 cents. Yeah.
I think I agree with you. I think like we're probably on the same page here, in that, you know, as far as writing blogs or as far as doing activism, right, for what's happening in the world that we live in today, like I think we only have so much time, and so we always want to spend our time dealing with what I would call the biggest threats, right? I would say Christianity and Islam are probably up there as far as what we have to deal with. That doesn't mean that, of course, like it's not worth pointing out. Like we have to point it out, but yeah, it is kind of weird. Like even just talking about Islam, like with you today, Apostate Prophet, I do feel a certain sense of hesitancy, not because like I don't think it's BS, not because I don't think it's not real, but because like I didn't grow up in that culture, And there is a part of me that, in our current culture says that I have to watch myself when looking at that. So I understand the hesitancy there, I think. And plus, like, it's always embarrassing to get something factually wrong, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just always embarrassing to get called out. So, talking about religions that I haven't spent a lifetime in, it seems like I'm always going to be at a disadvantage, right?
You don't have to have an opinion on everything that is going on in the world.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
if you have this this will to stand up for people or to stand up against grave injustices, and you become aware that a certain belief system or a certain ideology or certain practices are extremely harmful and very much against everything that you want to protect, then it's worth speaking out. That's just what I think. Yeah.
100%. I agree with you there. Barrie, what do you think?
Well, I think you're making a really good point there. The distinction there that, if there's demonstrable harm being done to people, that's the one you've got to go for, right? And, I don't have any trouble with that. But I guess what I was getting at for me was more on a personal level where just somebody invokes a belief and it's something that I just think it's not true. So it may not be one of those ones that you're talking about. It's not on the heavy level like slavery or something like that. But I don't want to feel like I'm being a hypocrite. I want to be sensitive to other people's beliefs, but I also want to be honest about who I am and be able to say, well, yeah, thanks for that, but I just don't think that's right, But that's the sort of thing. Am I allowed to do that? I'll give you a couple of quick examples in the Māori context, where, like I said, they're fairly harmless, but I don't believe them. One, for example, is in Māori mythology, there's a mythological creature called a taniwha, which is usually represented a bit like a dragon. And a taniwha is usually a benevolent creature that guards, say, a waterway or something like that. There have been cases where road construction projects have had to be diverted, and this is in New Zealand in the 2020s, because it's going to upset the taniwha. So millions of dollars of government money is being spent on a road project, and they've had to go around a certain geographical area, which otherwise would be quite suitable to go through, in terms of the geography. But because of the taniwha supposedly living there, it's had to divert. Now, on the one hand, do I really care that much which way the road goes? I suppose not. But I'm sorry, I don't believe there are any taniwha. I just don't,
Yeah. That reminds me, like in Iceland, I don't know how true this is now. I think this was like a couple of years ago, but a survey of something like 50% of the people there like believed in fairies, and like they actually adjusted their construction based on their belief in fairies. So yeah, like I would say that, yeah, in terms of public policy, yeah, absolutely go for it. Like I think you have it right on the personal stage. But like, yeah, on a personal thing, like if somebody tells me, yeah, I think my grandmother's in heaven now, I'm not going to say, yeah, your grandma's not in heaven. Like, that's just a dick move. I don't know. Like, I think that's something, I don't know if there's going to be a hard and fast rule. I think that's something that we all just kind of have to figure out in our personal lives and navigate it. It's really awkward for me, Barrie. I'll tell you this, because I talk to people, some in my life, who know that I do shows like this and who are afraid to tell me what they think about their religion or whatever, because they know that I have a lot of thoughts. So it's almost like, okay, well, I don't want to be a guy that nobody wants to talk to because I have strong opinions about things, right? And I'm sure you don't want to be that person either. So it's a tough thing, but I think Apostate Prophet and I are on the same level when it comes to, like, is it oppressing people in certain ways? Are certain groups of people not having their voices heard, or are human rights being violated? Yeah, absolutely. Speak up. If it's affecting the public, yeah, absolutely. I think that's reason to say something.
I mean, in all honesty, this might not be an entirely popular opinion, but you don't have any obligations to, to abide by certain values of consistency, or by you are not obligated to say, well, if I criticize one religion, then I should also criticize the other religion. I mean, you don't have such a responsibility that you have to, account for or anything like that. And I think no one should be bothered by having to hold on to such restrictions. You don't have any such obligations at all. If there is something out there with a certain religion or a certain cultural beliefs that you think are ridiculous to such an extent that they make life harder for everybody, then I think you are completely justified in, sharing your objections about that and maybe calling it ridiculous, and or in criticizing that and saying, hey, guys, I really appreciate how much you guys appreciate your culture, but it interferes with the rights and with what is more practical for all of us, so I'm sorry, I can't really respect that. I mean, in the end, you can discuss it, and you don't have to commit a genocide just because you disagree with people.
Yeah, totally. Barrie, I think that's all the time we have for this call, but thank you so much for calling in. This was a great topic conversation. I hope you can call in again with some more great topics to talk about. We got a lot of people on the line here, and that's great. Really glad that a lot of people want to talk to us tonight. I want to go back to Alan in California. Alan, we got you checked out with the crew here. You're back on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi, how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing good, Alan. How are you?
I'm doing very good. I'm a big-time fan of your guys' show, and I'm calling today in order to dispense of some thoughts that I had on Christianity as an atheist, as a radically atheist religion. And
Christianity as a radically atheist religion. Okay, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay, I appreciate it. Christianity, God dies on the cross, Jesus dies, and then what we get after is Holy Spirit, which is just a community of believers. As Christ says, when he's asked when the apostles ask him, how will we know when you return? He says, when two of you are gathered in my name, I am there. Or when there's love between the two of you, I am there. And I read that literally. And although, again, I'm a radical atheist, but I think that's the catch. You have to go through Christianity. Because as Gilbert Chesterton, a Catholic theologist, he says that in all other religions, you have atheists, more or less. But only in Christianity, he says, God, for a moment, becomes himself an atheist. On the cross, when Christ says, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? And this is a very crucial moment, I think, because, again, in other religions, where do you have God himself who becomes an atheist?
Yeah, so I would semantically argue with you there, because if Christ is on the cross and saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? I think that still implies he believes in God. Like, he just thinks God is forsaking him. I think that's a critical difference, right?
Yeah.
So as an atheist, I don't have a God belief. And Jesus definitely had a God belief. He may have doubted God, but he definitely still thought the existence of God was there, right?
Right. He doubted God. God himself. And so my idea there is, again, just to give a perspective difference, like in other religions, I simplified, I know, but let's say we're fallen, and then we have to climb back through, I don't know, some stupid self-whipping or some good deeds, spiritual exercise. But in Christianity, it's a different logic. It's, let's say you're fallen in a godless world. What's the Christian response? It's at that moment where you're most identified with Christ, who was also abandoned on the cross. It's not, New Testament is not simply bad news, good news, It's, you think this is bad news, God is dead? No, just look at it from a different perspective. This is your freedom. We're free. We are radically alone. It's up to us. I think, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, PA. I mean, Yeah, AP.
Well, it sounds like some very
Greatly.
Go ahead.
yeah, it sounds like some very radical revisionism to me of Christianity,
okay.
of Christian fundamental beliefs. The issue is, I mean, even for example, that phrase, "Why have you forsaken me?" or
Yeah.
my God, why have you forsaken me?" is not something. I mean, without context, it sounds a little bit funny, but within the within the history of Christianity, that is supposed to be, quoting the Psalms, in which the phrase appears, "Why have you forsaken me?" And that is not a declaration of, God, where are you? Why are you gone? It is supposed to, within the Christian context, that is supposed to fulfill a prophecy, which is why that phrase is being used. So it is not a matter of doubting God or rejecting God or saying that he's literally away and not there for you. No, it is actually a very significant part of the Psalms, which were widely known in that time, and which Christians believe Jesus appealed to and thereby fulfilled a prophecy. And as said, I mean, as Dan also explained, technically the term atheist cannot really apply. That would be very hard revisionism in the case of Christianity. If you look at the sayings of Jesus, if you want to take the Christian Gospels and the epistles, if you want to read them and take their words, since that is what we judge Christianity by, even in this case, you could see that it is very, strictly emphasized that there is God, there is the Father, and God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit will be with us forever, and we can all become his children and this and that. So there is this constant appeal to the existence of God. I mean, I don't see how you can possibly interpret that differently.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
I appreciate it. Go ahead. I appreciate it. If may I make a counter reply, if that's okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Just a reaction. Yes, I follow Hegel, who is a Lutheran but also philosopher, who says that what dies on the cross is the God of the beyond. Like, remember, Christ is not just a messenger. It's not, God sent his son. Okay, we screwed it up. Maybe in 1,000 years, another Messiah will come. What happens on the cross is the God of beyond. This idea of we don't know what's going on, but we can be assured.
Okay. So, Alan, I feel like we're just talking about theological interpretations here. And the problem with theological interpretations is we can do this all day and we'll never get anywhere with it. I want to talk about the original claim, which was Christianity is an atheist religion. Now, interestingly enough, Christian atheism is a thing. And by is a thing, I mean, it at least has a Wikipedia article and there's some writings about it here and there. But the problem with Christianity is a million different people interpret it a million different ways. And, if it means that it's an atheist religion for you, then I would say, I guess, but I don't think that religious scholars who have been talking about this stuff for years and years and years would realistically come to that conclusion. Maybe there's some French scholars here or there, but I don't see how I could come to that, and based on what you're saying, I agree with Apostate Prophet here. I think it's kind of revisionism of what the original cultural context of what some of these texts mean. Of course, we'll never get the full context, but I don't know. I think calling Christianity an atheist religion is kind of silly.
Yeah.
Okay, I
agree with that.
All I can say is it's not just a joke, but I would just say that there are some serious theologians moving in this direction. I mentioned Chesterton. There's also Paul Claudel, but I also referred to Slavoj Žižek. And if I may just say, I'm going to use the race card, if that's okay, as I'm an Armenian American, and if that means anything, Armenia was the first country to adopt Christianity as the state religion. So I would like to formally apologize on behalf of our nation. If we had not done that, maybe we would not be in this situation we are in today. But also, I want to redeem, I think, something which is radically important in the Judeo-Christian so-called legacy, as a universal message of Christianity being the Father, again, Son dies, the death of Christ means we don't return to the Father. We get Holy Spirit, which I read as literally, my last sentence I conclude, is just the first like egalitarian community of believers. And as St. Paul says, like, there's neither Jew or Greek, neither man or woman. We are all equal in Christ. This is the message that I think we should, we're not ready yet to hear it, but I think we can do it. It's not just.
I wish that was the message. I don't think we'd be here talking about it if everybody thought that way. But I agree. I wish that was the message. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, I do want to kind of wrap up this call because we got some other people that want to call in. But Alan, I will say thank you for calling in. It was an interesting discussion there. I will say that's probably the most scared I've ever been when you said you're going to pull the race card. I don't know what was about to happen after you said that. And that was a freaky moment there, but at least you kind of explained some context there. But it is interesting. I mean, I guess I should clarify my point in response here in that I'm not saying that there aren't serious people, academics, who study this and can come to similar conclusions. But, you know, my interpretation of what was originally said was that Christianity as a whole is like an atheist religion. And I don't know, it just comes down to semantics and meanings of words here. I think there are definitely elements of doubt and elements of skepticism about what God is in different interpretations of that, especially in 20th century philosophy and onward about, you know, what that could mean for modern Christianity. But again, all of the scholars you mentioned are mostly modern contexts. And I don't think ancient peoples really were thinking about it in those same ways. I think they're reinterpretations and cool ones. Like, that message sounds cool, but it's not what most people believe. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I can't help but think about Nietzsche, who said something like, I mean, he was extremely critical of Christianity and of Christians in general. He openly kept calling them hypocrites for appearing or for appealing to weakness as their virtue, but using this weakness for superiority and things like that. There is a lot of so many layers to his views on Christianity and Christians. But he, for example, has this line and this view about Christianity. Ironically, while Christians view somebody like Nietzsche as a nihilist, Nietzsche, on the other hand, turns around and says that Christianity is a sad, life-denying, nihilistic religion because it denies and hates life, and denies life, gives no value to life, and is thereby a desperate form of nihilism that people need to rise beyond from, and that is just.
He called it a slave religion. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you can interpret these things as you wish to kind of make a point. You know, Christians themselves would never call Christianity a nihilistic religion. On the contrary, that would be unacceptable to them.
Yes.
You know, I don't know if you can see the point here, but that's just what I think.
I see your point. Yeah, the fun thing is interpretations will never end. We will always live in a circle of different interpretations of what this religion means until I think Christianity is going to be around forever. I don't think it's ever going to completely go away. But anyway, that's a fun thing to think about. We got some other callers, though, and I want to get to some more people. Before we do, we have a quick promo we want to show. So we're going to roll this clip now. Take a look.
They were like, like anyone can really go that long without sex. And I'm like, y'all are not going to die for not having sex.
We're holding an event in a hotel that is rumored to be haunted. Somebody reported that a ghost crawled into bed with her and had sex with her. I don't want that to happen. And not that I think it's likely, but it just makes me I feel a little uneasy.
You're not getting yourself vaccinated. You can have issues with your reproductive cycle. So, ladies, gentlemen, take care of your baby ovens. Take care of your wee-wees, folks. Get the shot.
You know, get involved, get on that list, get read out. Maybe if you have a funny name, you'll become the honorable mention.
Unless it's like mayonnaise 55, then don't do it.
Yeah, you call.
Let's not curse each other out. That's unnecessary.
How about you stop telling me what language I can use on my show, and you learn how to have a conversation where you acknowledge point and stop trying to dodge.
Ooh, a lot of heat packed in that promo. A lot of heat packed in the promo, but I love doing those promos. They're super great. Definitely check out the last 2 weeks episodes of Truth Wanted. I wasn't on for either of them, but X-Christian Aaron and Puck were on for those. So really fun times there. We got some more calls we want to get to. thank you everybody who's been calling in tonight. You guys are really rocking it. I want to talk to Anthony. He's calling in from North Carolina. Anthony, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, how's it going, fellas? Yeah,
Good,
so my topic was just how to talk to friends when they bring up religion or aliens, and then if possible, I'd like to give some examples of conversations I've had.
Okay. Yeah, why don't you start with the examples first?
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I have one for aliens, one for religion. I'll go with the religion one first.
Okay.
So, hanging out with some friends. I was hanging out with some friends, and one of them says, yeah, I got into an argument with an atheist today because I told him he was agnostic. And now I'm usually pretty non-confrontational, but sometimes somebody says something and I think I'm going to say something. So I say, okay, well, what's the context? What happened? They said, well, he told me he wasn't sure if there's a God. So I told him he's agnostic. I'm like, well. So I explained, the difference between, Gnosticism, agnostic, knowledge versus belief. And then it kind of spiraled from there. And my other friend then said, yeah, well, if he believes in science, he's religious anyway. And then I'm like, okay. So we kind of went on a spiral from there. So after that, they were talking about this tribe that practiced religious medicine. It just kind of went a little crazy.
Yeah, sounds like it was unproductive. Sounds like you didn't get a lot done there. So, as always, I get these kinds of calls fairly frequently, and I usually cite the same thing every time, which is I'm a big fan of street epistemology. And I think if you incorporate more of those methods into your conversations, you're going to see so much mileage with that. The important thing with implementing techniques that are used in street epistemology is recognizing that you are not probably, like all things considered, going to change that person's mind by the end of the conversation, and you need to accept that because people are just not that easy. They just aren't that easy. They usually hold on to beliefs, especially deeply held ones, for as long as they can. Most people are like that, especially if their methodology by which they came to their beliefs is not going to be the same as yours. Okay. So that's my first thing of advice, is just like, you gotta let it go. I personally hate conversations when it comes to gatekeeping labels and stuff. I'm like not a huge gatekeeper. I let people identify, even if I don't, use the labels the same way, because like they have a certain meaning to it, and as long as they're not using it in specific associations that don't make sense, i.e., like atheist Christian, then I'm generally okay with it. So that would frustrate me personally if I was in a conversation like that. But the kind of questions I would ask would just be, what their definitions of these words mean and why they come to those conclusions of those definitions. For example, I used to think that an atheist was someone who believed in science. That was like my belief from that. And like if somebody asked me why I thought that, I would say, well, because that's what it is. But like if somebody came to me with a different way in how that's used, which is the majority of the atheist community, then I might have to question my own beliefs. I mean, like you have to just start with the question asking first. The question asking first is going to be better than getting into these arguments. As soon as you make like a counter argument, then it goes back and forth, and people just don't respond to that too well. But Apostate Prophet, what do you think of that conversation?
Well, in all honesty, I largely agree with you. I don't see any problem in that. I find it very fun, very much fun and enjoyable to have, very deep, very heated conversations and discussions about religious beliefs and this and that. In the end, both sides, whether you believe or disbelieve, you think that you are upon something true, and you are very heavily convinced about that. And I just find it very much enjoyable to, have.
I never said it wasn't fun. Okay, never said it wasn't fun. Just that, is it the most productive thing we can do at the end of the day with the individuals in our lives? I don't think so.
Let me say this. I have made experiences because of my cultural and religious background that are not very pleasant, but if you are not in such an environment, if you are not going to end up beating each other up, getting lynched, or having some very bad stuff done which will put an end to your life, I think there's nothing wrong with it. I mean,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that for sure. I think in this context, we're talking about just a conversation between friends, right? How do we best handle that? And I still stick to street epistemology. I think that is, obviously I have anecdotal evidence of that, but I do think it's taking methods of human psychology and thoughts from that research into conversations, and I wish people use those kind of things more. But people like to argue. I mean, that's just, I'm not saying it's not fun, but I don't know. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, well, for starters, I am grateful to have friends that I can have these conversations with. So, these don't end in, screaming matches, mind you. But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, whenever I'm having these conversations, I try to, keep it, how do you say, civil. I try to ask the right questions. Like when they brought up the whole religious medicine thing, I would ask, well, does the medicine work regardless of whether or not they're praying over it? And then they would just respond by saying, look it up. And there we are from there.
Yeah. Well, at that point, I mean, I would ask about the methodologies, do you believe in things because studies demonstrate that, or why do you believe the things that they do? Where does that come from? I think that's important questions we need to ask all of ourselves. Why do I believe that the COVID vaccine works? Well, I believe, in the research that's gone into it, I do believe that those studies are accurate and legitimate in that, and that belief affects my belief in the vaccine's efficacy. So you can always kind of go down these rabbit holes. Even then, if it feels like there's a brick wall there's still threads you can pull at, I think, through this, but you do have to think outside the box sometimes.
Yeah, I just made it a personal thing on my part to, in my private life, not to very much, engage in trying to convince somebody that I know that their own beliefs are, stupid or wrong or ridiculous or whatever it is, unless they really, approach me and want to talk about it, unless they really want to change my mind or they are aggressive about it. I don't really, I don't really care. But of course, if you if you do care, if you do want to change people's minds, then the best way would be to simply try to first find out why exactly they believe in the things they believe in, and why people believe in. Why do you have the need to believe in the existence of God? Why do you believe in a soul? What is that belief exactly based on? Have you ever fact-checked that? Have you ever thought about it more deeply and try to go through the layers of the epistemology of this entire thing called the soul that so many people, even outside of religion, still believe in nowadays, and all that? But it's very much something that I try to keep out of my personal life, if you ask me.
Yeah, and that's another question too, as far as like how far should we go in our personal lives with having these conversations. Personally, I'm fine with it when it comes up. If it comes up, I think that's free game organically. It does get kind of dicey in the workplace though. When you're on a professional level, especially if it's potential clients that you have to talk to or something. I wouldn't tell you. I don't know what's the best thing to do there, unless it's particularly harmful or extreme. Like I mean, you can come up with examples on your own time, but I personally enjoyed these conversations. I find them to be quite fascinating. And obviously, I have this call-in show where I talk to people about it all the time too, but this is like not reality in some sense. YouTube's not real, right?
No,
Apostate Prophet. YouTube's not real.
It is absolutely not.
It's not real. This is everything you see on YouTube. I mean, I talk to real people on this show. Don't get me wrong, but when content creators are out there, they're targeting specific audiences. They're not trying to speak to everybody. So you always have to target your own specific audience when you're talking to people, and make sure that you're being consistent with that. Because if you're going to talk like Matt Dillahunty to somebody on the first time, they might not like that. Some people don't respond to that super well, right? So anyway, it's a whole thing. Not to rag on Matt, but it's just kind of funny. Anyway, Anthony, I think that's all the time I have for this particular call. Unless you had any final thoughts you want to throw out.
Well, I try not to be too aggressive with my approach. Most of the conversation I have are reactionary. I'm not seeking out like, hey, what do you believe? Tell me. I want to make fun of you. It's nothing like that.
Yeah.
But, thanks for the conversation. I'll definitely look up street epistemology, and good one, guys.
Definitely do. I definitely recommend it. Thank you so much, Anthony. And we got some other people who want to call in. We got a call from the UK coming in next. This is James from the UK, who specifically has a question for you, Apostate Prophet. James, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I just wanted to first say that I really love Apostate Prophet's work. I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
And my question for him is that religions can often bring a sense of community and comfort. So do you think that Western society and culture can sometimes go too far to encourage like a lack of religion or irreligiosity? And I've got a sort of follow-up question, but I'll just start with that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, first of all, that question, James. I appreciate that. It is true. Religion, religious beliefs, religious communities can give you a sense of community, and this is not something that is merely religious propaganda. This is something that I myself have learned in psychology classes as well. That religious belief is associated with a certain sense of community, which is associated with a certain sense of overall happiness, and may even alleviate certain symptoms of mental health problems to a certain extent. That said, it might also be a great exaggeration to credit religion for all of that. But it is true. Religion has some impact. Religion can bring people together. It can provide a sense of community. And in the West, we have a great emphasis on individualism and on how no one has the right to tell anybody else what to do. People are supposed to look out for themselves and this and that. It's and I really appreciate the individualism, because I myself lived in a culture, and I am very familiar with cultures that are the exact opposite of that. They are heavily collectivist. There you have a sense of loyalty. You must be part of communities, otherwise you are looked at in very weird ways and called names and blamed and all of that. I think a healthy line in between might be what some people prefer, what even I could prefer, if I found a community that I did not think preaches things or requires the preaching and the believing in things that simply do not seem plausible to me. I mean, I am personally, for example, interested in certain religious congregations, communities, and gatherings. The issue is fine, it's nice to have a place to go to and hold on to and to have a sense of community, but can I really enjoy that as long as being part of that community also comes with certain beliefs and ideas that I simply cannot accept because they are irrational and implausible to me? That will bother me at some point. And I guess that pushes people away from such communities that come with obligatory beliefs.
Yeah, people wonder why people get into cults. Well, it's because of the sense of community half the time that those cults are able to give you. People who are on the outskirts of society or have gone through some sort of recent trauma are going to be more open and acceptant of those kinds of communities because there's a sense of rules that's given. There's a sense of purpose, and people that can support you in what you do, and in turn you supporting them. So obviously religion is just a kind of a bigger extent of that, right? Like it gives you a sense of purpose, it gives you a sense of community, and that doesn't mean that like that's all good. I think the folks at Jim Jones's place would probably agree with me in that. It's like we have to look at the real problems that these kinds of ideas can bring and where they come from, and it comes from like very specific places, like usually from the text. And if it's not from the text, it's usually from some sort of state power or, some other influence that is really telling people to believe and think in certain ways. So yeah, like we have to be critical of that. I agree with you. Like that, the fact that it gives people a sense of community and purpose does not mean that it's right, does not mean that it's just, and doesn't mean that it can't be something that's not worth criticism of. I definitely think that we should.
What do you think, James?
Okay. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I definitely sympathize with the point about, if you're sort of, in order to belong to the community, you're having to sort of attest to things that seem very implausible to you. That would, be uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah, I was wondering, though, as like sort of the second question, like if you were to sort of imagine a kind of, if things get better in the future and we sort of move towards a sort of a society that's kind of closer to being better or that kind of thing. Like, do you imagine that it would be better for the society to be kind of totally irreligious, or do you think that there's maybe a happy medium where, you know, there's kind of like a degree of kind of gentle religion that's, you know, kind of got the nice bits and has kind of grown out of the sort of not?
Good question.
I feel like I actually missed the point, or part of the point of your initial question, and I'm very sorry for that, because your question was more about the bad impacts or the bad consequences of too much anti-religious or anti community sentiments and this extreme emphasis on individualism. And the thing is, I have a perspective on religion that might be different from popular perspectives. I call this post-theism, and I think that religions were functional, they were utilitarian, they were beneficial, and religion was or is an essential, inevitable part of human development, of human civilization. Humans necessarily came up with the concepts of religion in order to explain things, in order to establish morals, in order to create communities, and it helped them get through things until we found better ways, until we improved these religions, or we changed these religions internally or adopted different religions. Nowadays we have found means that help us to go on without religion. People can live great lives, establish great civilizations, great societies without having to rely on religion, without having to rely on religious doctrines and values. And I would certainly think that God played a role in the development and history of human civilization. It was maybe good within a certain context, but maybe a future in which we do not need this anymore, because we now have different means that will help us live nicely, that will help us establish laws or adopt certain philosophies, establish certain communities based on values that we explore philosophically or scientifically, for example. And we have means to come together as humans in order to judge entire religious beliefs or political ideas or other ideologies based on their impacts on humanity, on whether they are hurtful or good, and this and that. So I can imagine that there is a future in which we can be just as good and just as much together as a community without having to rely on certain ancient religious beliefs, I would say. But I agree on one thing, final word, sorry, that too much individualism and too much of a reactionary hate towards traditional community and religion might be harmful to a certain extent, or might put people into an awkward position. But people just have to figure out to solve that problem in a different way without having to, go back to that religious community.
Yes,
that makes sense.
I think what you're saying is great, and I totally agree. I would only add to that, there are people that have called the atheist community of Austin a religious organization. Okay, so like we also have to wonder, at what do we call a religion at the end of the day? That people call the state a religion, people call the family unit a religion, and to me, when I make these distinctions, I'm talking about things that are supernatural or otherwise unverifiable, that are necessary for a functioning organization or sociocultural system of beliefs. Okay, I think that's a really important distinction to make, because in practicality, we're seeing that it's unnecessary to live with those assumptions as we continue to live, at least in the modern American life. Now, I say that there are still people that definitely believe it, but like in function, I live as an atheist, and I can do that because I don't need a God belief to find fulfillment or to like live my life in any meaningful way. And that is a place where I think a lot of people are going to continue to be as Christianity gets more milquetoast, and as just the world just becomes more secular in general. I hope the world will become more secular in general, because overall I think these beliefs are at best harmless, at worst totalitarian, right? So I'd rather just cut the middleman and just say, hey, I don't think we need this. So I would try to, make it go away as much as I can. But that's my thoughts on that. Anyway, James, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, just to say, as I understand both your sentiments. I'm going to lay my cards down. I don't believe in sort of the traditional religions, but I kind of think that I'm probably going to sort of raise my future family in a kind of gentle sort of Christian way, the way I was brought up. And I expect they'll probably end up realizing when they're adults or teenagers that, oh, this isn't literally true. And so just because I felt like it kind of worked quite well for me and I sort of quite liked it. So I'm probably going to do that as well. My last sort of...
Yeah. I guess if you're not teaching them that a man literally rose from the dead 2,000 years ago, that, I guess I'm cool with that, but at the end of the day, I do wonder, why not choose secular humanism, as a methodology, if you so need to have a label or why Christianity, the Christian tradition in particular?
Well, I guess it comes down to personal preference and that sort of thing. But so wait a second. Anyway, I'll just say that to Apostate Prophet, well done so much on your sort of tireless work to get a lot of these sort of public debates going between Muslim apologists and Dawaists, because I know that for a long time they were kind of pretty unwilling or only willing to do sort of Christian versus Muslim debates. But I think it'll really pay off in the long run to kind of sort of open the door to kind of more of these sort of Muslim, ex-Muslim debates. So thanks for talking to me, you guys.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I want to do more of that stuff. I feel like many people don't really appreciate it. And we have an upcoming debate. I'm going to debate a Muslim scholar in a week or so, next weekend. And this will be the first ever debate of such a form, and I'm really excited about that. I want to contribute to normalizing such interactions. This is, I think, really great. We need it. We desperately need it. But thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, James. Thanks for calling in. Really appreciate you talking to us. But yeah, it's a great question because I get asked that quite a bit. As far as do we need religion? Is religion essential to living and stuff? And I think of was it Reza Aslan that writes about the history of God and that kind of stuff and how it functions in society. And I am still of the belief that for all practical reasons we really don't need it. I think it served a function, and now we can kind of move on. But speaking of moving on, we should get to another caller here. I want to talk to Lauren calling in from Arizona. Lauren, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, well, can you guys hear me all right?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, I have bad reception. I'm sorry if I cut out. Please let me know if I do.
Will do.
So I have an experience, and I'm wondering, I guess, what you guys' thoughts are on this, because when I was younger, I was in a cult, and I would get terrible headaches, and I would kind of see things like auras and stuff that weren't really there. And the cult I was in convinced me that I was being given messages from God, and I had to decipher them, and the headaches were either demons trying to get into my head and distort God's message, or that it was punishment for not interpreting the signs I was seeing correctly. Now, I don't know if you guys know, but it turned out there's this, you can get migraines with visual disturbances. That gives you after images, etc., and it is literally called migraine. So after that experience, after I got out of the cult, after I realized I was suffering needlessly and panicking myself over something that was a completely normal, and treatable medical condition, I was wondering, how many of these prophets or historical figures or psychics and soothsayers just had some neurological thing going on where they were experiencing, flashing lights, or auras or something else like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, I was just curious.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting when you think of Jesus and you think of the Bible. There's a great emphasis that's put on healing people, and even in the Old Testament, going back to that religious, you see that personal maladies are a big theme as far as like what this whole thing is about and how to like rectify those personal maladies, and even going so far as to say that sin itself is the cause of a lot of people's personal health issues, which is a terrible thing to believe. And I'm so sorry, by the way, that you had that experience growing up. It sounds like it's been put behind you. I hope everything is going well with that going forward. But yeah, I would speculate too that a lot of the traditions that we see coming from people from the past are people suffering from some kind of illness and interpret that illness in ways that make sense to other people with similar symptoms, or are like kind of making other people believe that they have certain symptoms or things happen in their life reinterpreted in new ways. With medical phenomenon, you see this all the time with like the cancer people who say like, oh, you can cure cancer with elderberries, or you can cure it with all these other things. Like anecdotal evidence kind of makes people suggest that, oh, these other traditional treatments aren't working, but you might feel better for a day from this treatment. And I think a lot of religion boils down to that is, oh, I felt good after I prayed. That must mean that, God is real. And that's sad, but I think that's convincing for a lot of people.
There is a thing, very sorry, by the way, Lauren, and I hope you feel good today, nowadays. But it is indeed true that people had this attitude in the past about psychology, about mental problems, about hallucinations and things like that. They interpreted those things very differently and even valued such things. They respected people who have hallucinations in different civilizations, different societies. I mean, you have to think the study of psychology is very new. It's only been around for, I don't know, like 100 years. And going into psychiatry and trying to actually analyze the normal human psyche and the normal human brain is something that has been around only very for a very short time. Even in the most developed countries, among the most developed nations, you will see that large parts of the population don't even understand mental health problems. Many of them don't believe in mental health problems. They still interpret them as simply spiritual matters or possessions or this and that. I mean, I myself, a very mild example, I know, I used to have a lot of cases of sleep paralysis, and I had to really make my own research because I was convinced, because that's what everybody told me, including my parents, that this is actually a jinn in my Islamic culture, a night being, like a demon that is actually bothering me and sitting on my chest. That's what's actually happening. If you look at certain prophets or gods or things like that in the past, you will see that they had lots of symptoms that correspond with symptoms which we nowadays know are attributed to certain mental health conditions. For example, one final thing, in my own example, I am a former Muslim. I used to believe in Islam. I used to believe that Muhammad is, the holy prophet, and he communicated with an angel. When you actually critically analyze this, you see that there is no proof that he ever communicated with anybody. Nobody else ever saw it. He simply reported that this man was coming to him, and he also explained that he receives his revelations in forms of a ringing of a bell that suddenly happens out of nowhere, and then he has these thoughts afterwards. People saw him shaking or making snorting noises. Weird movements, states of trance, and things like that. And people took that as signs of God communicating with him, in the deserts of 7th century Arabia, where people did not nearly understand, psychology and mental health issues. And they interpreted any such things as possessions, as divine inspiration, divine communication, I don't know, demons, monsters, and this and that. And I mean, that is a nice thing to analyze and to look more deeply into.
Yep. And the Apostle Paul too, if you think about, like, he supposedly had a vision on the road to Damascus where he was like temporarily blind for a bit, and that could have been a stroke. Just these modern medical definitions that we have now just simply did not exist back then, and people who did call themselves doctors worldwide obviously came from very different traditions and traditions in how to interpret and treat what was seen. And I think demon paralysis, demon possession is just another cultural framework which we have kind of interpreted mental illness, and it's kind of sad to say that, but like I think that is what it is, and also gaslighting as well, in terms of people taking your experiences and shoving their lens on what it is that you experienced through what they perceive to be true, which is terrible. And again, I hope that things are okay with you now, Lauren. The aura stuff is really interesting. We've only talked about it a little bit on the show, but there is a whole background of people trying to create cameras that can supposedly catch auras and stuff, and it's all scam bullshit and stuff. Like it's really nasty what people will do. But
I'm actually really interested.
What are your thoughts, Lauren?
Yeah,
the aura stuff.
Well,
yeah, it's weird.
I go up to Sedona pretty regularly because I live in Phoenix, and I've always kind of wanted to get one of those scam pictures if they weren't like $40, because I am so curious if I'm so scam, BS. It's a hobby of mine.
Yeah, I tested out too. But they're like $1,000 on Amazon if you ever try to get it. And of course, they're just not real. But anyway, yeah, it's bad.
I'm actually really interested, Lauren, in your experience with these things, in your experience with the cult and aura and how they interpreted it and how it eventually turned out. I am really personally very interested in that. But yeah,
if you're open to talking about that, I'd be interested in that too.
Yeah, I can absolutely talk about it. So basically, I was pretty young, and I think I was just hitting puberty. And then I started seeing these little lights in the sky, which if you guys look up visual snow online, I get it much more mild than any of the pictures you'll see online. So like it doesn't affect my day to day at all. But I started seeing that stuff, and I started getting these terrible headaches, and I started missing school because of it. And so I went to the doctor. My parents took me to the doctor. The doctor poo-pooed it and basically was like, oh, it's all in your head. And I was terrified because he said, this is all in your head, like get therapy. So I was like, oh my God, I'm just a kid. I'm crazy. There's something wrong with me. So then there were these other girls who said, oh no, we see the same things. It means you have powers. And being young and naive and wanting any explanation to help me, I believed them. And so it got me into this cult thing. There was sexual abuse, there was physical abuse. It was really, really bad. And then when I got older, it was horrible. It was awful. I still have the scars because they like literally cut into me. It was bad, man. It was seriously fucked up. And I think I'm really lucky, honestly, because like I got older and I found like I found a reasonable scientific explanation for what was happening to me. And as soon as I found the logical explanation, and then I went to the doctor, and they're like, a different doctor, thank God, and they're like, oh yeah, this is definitely migraines. You're fine, kid, basically. it was scary because I had to deprogram myself. I spent a long time deprogramming myself, and the other girls wouldn't just, see stuff. They would the people in this cult would hear voices and see things, and I didn't understand for the longest time why I could only do it around them. And turns out that's because they were depriving me of sleep by making me stay up for multiple nights in a row. I know now that that's a classic cult tactic, is sleep deprivation. And those sleepless nights would trigger my migraines, and then, and that's what would happen. But it was, it was
wow.
the experience. And I feel really lucky.
Wow.
At an ex, because they still believe all that. Still, as far as see things and hear things, and I feel like I got really fucking lucky to get out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's very important to tell your story. It's there are probably many people out there who have to hear this, who are in such a situation, and who might connect with you based on your story, based on what you went through. Maybe they are going through something similar. Maybe it's not a cult. Maybe it's something different, or maybe they have mental health problems that they're trying to get out to, and you are giving them, you are helping them by just telling us this. So it's definitely invaluable, and I totally encourage going out and telling your story more, because these are things that people don't really talk about enough. We have this stuff in Hollywood, in dramatized and monetized ways, not in really helpful ways. These are things that people need to properly learn and connect to in order to help those in need. I'm really, really, very, very sorry, and thank you so much for bringing this out here.
Yes, Lauren, thank you so much for telling your story. And again, I echo what Apostate Prophet is saying. Definitely use that experience to the best that you can so that you can help others. I think that's a wonderful thing to do, because people think they're so smart that they can't fall into a cult, but that is just absolutely not true. And cults today, like you were saying, are not what they show on Hollywood. Sometimes it's just online chat groups or a Discord server. It can come from anywhere. And there are these kinds of classic techniques that you can kind of look at and figure out exactly what you're dealing with there. But Lauren, thanks again for calling in and sharing that with us. Really appreciate the time that you have spent with us today. And now we are getting towards the end of the show, but we are not going away just yet. You should join us after the show for our after show. It's on the fan run Discord server for the atheist community of Austin. The link for that is going to be in the description and also in the chat there. So check that out, where we'll be answering some questions for that in just a little bit here. But first, I want to give a very special thank you to Apostate Prophet for being on the show tonight. It was a pleasure to have you on. Where can people find you at?
Thank you so much. I still feel very sad that no people who believe in Islam called in and challenged me on things. I really wanted to.
I expected more of that too. I don't know what was going on. They were afraid of you. They were afraid of you tonight. That's what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're more afraid of their own beliefs. But yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I am primarily on. I don't really use many social media platforms anymore. I am primarily on YouTube. That's where you find me under Apostate Prophet. That's where I am. I try to focus my energy mostly on that, because I think that's the best place to spread all the information that I want to spread. So yeah, that's where you can find me. I don't know what else to say about it.
Cool. I need to clarify. The crew gets on to me pretty much every week about this. It is the Atheist Community of Discord. That is the official Discord title. Okay. The Atheist Community of Discord, a fan-run Discord server. So that is where we're going to be. Sorry, I always mess it up. But yes, Atheist Community of Discord. So go check that out in just a second. But in case you're watching this for the first time, if you came from Apostate Prophet's channel or somewhere else, this is Truth Wanted. We do this live every week, 7 p.m. Central. So if you're not watching this live, you can also check this out on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever else you might get your podcasts. Please like and leave a review if you can. It always helps, and subscribing always helps too. It helps promote content creators who can be platformed on here and give their points of view, like Apostate Prophets. Thanks so much again for being with us today. Folks, there's other ways that you can support us as well. You can go on patreon.com/truthwanted. As I mentioned before, you'll get that weekly shout out if you're a new patron. So thank you guys who donate on there. Another way to support is through our merch. You can go get some cool merch through our store. Link for that is going to be in the description, but we got the swag, we got the shirts, the hoodies, the stickers, and the masks. You already know. tiny.cc/merch ACA. There's also a Facebook group that you can join and talk about the show with other fans. So check out that Facebook group if you like, and all the shows are posted on there as well. So thanks to everybody who posts on that group. If you want to follow me and do what I do, I'm usually on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan. So check me out on there. And you can also email the show. It's truth@atheist-community.org. So thank you to everybody who goes on there. This show is part of the AEN Podcast Network, where you can watch other shows like Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience and all the other cool shows that we do here. So check those out too if you haven't already. I am actually going to be on Talk Heathen this Sunday. So if you like me and you like Lloyd Evans, you should come watch us both together. We're going to have another fun show. And last but never, ever, ever, ever least, I have to thank the wonderful, spectacular, amazing, fantastic crew that helps make this show happen every single week. Do we have the crew cam? There's the crew cam. Look at that crew. Look at that crew. And the cats. The cats are important to the crew's success. Cats are important to the crew's success. Ask any YouTuber. Cats are super important to making shows happen. So thank you, crew, for making the show happen every single week. Apostate Prophet, do you have any words of wisdom before we close out tonight's show?
Absolutely. I forgot to say one of the most crucial things that need to be said. Stay away from Islam.
I endorse that. I endorse that. Thank you so much for being on the show. Remember, folks, to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
Watch the nonprofits and join the hosts in the live chat. Sundays at 3 p.m. Central between the Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.